Today we'll be talking about a couple of other tools that structuralist analysts would have used in case of the difference between human usage and metaphysical implications of any structure are to be compared and contrasted, or in case of the analysis of some kind of a text that has a human usage dimension and some kind of notional idealistic dimension as well. For example, think about why the top of any structure that is supposed to be a place of worship or a shrine always very elevated, always some kind of a dome structure or something reaching up high into the firmament is at top. You would have noticed, if you have visited any place of worship, whether it's a pagan place of worship like the Hindus would do, or an Islamic shrine or a Christian shrine, that the roof or the terrace of that particular building does not end at what you would have commonly expected from the surrounding buildings. There is no flat top, there is no slanting top. Instead, there is something which is declaring or notifying some kind of acclivity, which is announcing to the world a zone of height, a zone of ennoblement through elevation. Now the question is, what to make sense of a temple or a mosque or a church always having a structure atop it which is high into the sky? How to analyze this particular structure as a structuralist? Then you would have noticed that there is a dimension which is related to human usage. Lots of devotees or pilgrims or prayer seekers would congregate in that area. Inside that building, there would be a mass of people taking the service offered by that place of worship. They need to breathe freely. Plus, you know that yesterday the roads were not like what it is today in the world of Google Maps. Yesterday, the world's transportation system was not so good. Yesterday, there was no TripAdvisor or Hotels.com. So the pilgrims who would come from far away would not only need a place of adequate respiration inside the building, but also an unmistakable compass-like determination of the location of the building from far so that it can be seen from far. And if the height of the building, in comparison with other buildings, is elevated enough, then the pilgrims would unmistakably notice it from far in yesterday's roads and yesterday's travel conditions. Plus, there is a need for an acoustic specialization so that whatever is announced in form of whatever prayer is heard adequately, clearly, and dispersed as far as practicable. This type of analysis in which we are looking into the usage dimension in terms of the horizontal axis of civilization and society, in terms of human need and human utility, in terms of human ambition and human program, is called anthropological structural analysis of a given text. On the contrary, one may also point out to the fact that God is infinite, so he needs to be, or she needs to be, or it needs to be higher than our ordinary realities. In terms of the geography of power in which God should be situated at the realm of the infinite and the divine, we have to situate the object of our prayer, the target of our prayer, the recipient of our prayer, high above. So the more ascending the structure of the space of God, the space of prayer is, the more unmistakably it would symbolize and stand for the cosmological implication of God as the infinite and divine. Plus, if we understand that pilgrimage is some kind of a journey, or soul is some kind of a voyager, then the soul's acclivity means spiritual acclivity. The soul's ascending voyage means the ascending voyage of our spiritual quest. So, the place of worship needs to be high in its symbolic dimension. So, the actual architecture of the place of worship or the place of visit by the pilgrims needs to be kind of concave at the top, high reaching up into the sky, and if possible, higher than the surrounding buildings. This probably is a dimension that is not directly related to human usage or pragmatics of civilization down below, because civilization is at the horizontal level, but at the vertical level, spiritual journey towards God, spiritual prayer towards God, is in the metaphysical realm, and is in the realm of ideas and notions and concepts. So the same structure can be analyzed from the human usage point of view or from the notional, idealistic, metaphysical point of view. If we analyze a structure from the first point of view, then it is called anthropological structural analysis, as I have already mentioned a couple of seconds ago. And if it is to be interpreted in terms of its metaphysical or philosophical or notional dimension, then it is called cosmological structuralist analysis, which is not directly related or linked to the pragmatics of civilization, the pragmatics of humanism, or the pragmatics of human usage, or the pragmatics of anthropocentric worldview, but it links in the symbolic realm, it links in the notional sense, it links in the sense of ideas to the implication of the project, to the implication of the structure. So, a structuralist analyst would take up a text, and on the horizontal axis of his analysis, he would place the anthropological tools. And on the vertical axis, he would also ponder about, reflect upon, and interrogate the cosmological dimensions of the same structure. For example, if we are making a structuralist analysis of Kubla Khan, then the first few lines, if we take up for our structuralist analysis, we would notice that on the anthropological dimension, state power is named, imperialism is named, tyranny and despotism is named, aristocratic imperative upon the proletariat to work for its own pleasure is named. In Xanadu, the Emperor Kubla Khan decrees a stately pleasure dome. The word stately, as opposed to the notional sense of majestic, can also mean a direct announcement of state power, especially monarchic and tyrannical state power. Decree means order given to the subjects by the rex. And the signifier pleasure, as opposed to the emotional dimension of it, it announces the lavish aristocratic indulgence into hedonism probably. So in Xanadu, the stately pleasure dome that is decreed by the Emperor Kubla Khan stands in the anthropological analysis for monarchic, tyrannical state power ordering the subjects or the working class to make, if possible, and probably through enslavement and bonded labor and unpaid labor till death, a stately pleasure dome at a wild place where the conqueror wants to establish a high monument, erect a high monument and structure and architecture that would stand for his power, his actual power in the empire. But on the other hand, the poem also stands for the gap between primary imagination and secondary imagination. At the notional level, primary imagination is linked to the infinite repetition of our sense of myself, which we usually called ego or aham. And this egotistical sublime that creates an affection of I towards myself announces itself in continuous, if mistaken but compulsory, identification of I with me or the mirror image. But on the other hand, the secondary imagination is not that humanist in its assertive aggression. Rather, it is a principle of hospitality. It announces the doors of perception and permeable ego boundaries to be fused with other terms, other creatures, other forces. And the fusion is organic, so that the tertium aliquid, or the third term that is generated in the fusion of two terms, or let's say the self and the other, that is beyond the limits of the self and the other, or the first term or the second term. This secondary imagination is unreachable to Kubla Khan because he indulges in the reputation, and he indulges also in the reputation of the primary imagination. So, the word pleasure stands for egotistical, almost self-congratulatory psychology. And stately stands for the elaborate arrangement that the egotist makes for him in his world. In Xanadu, the height attempted by Kubla Khan is high because his indulgence in mere primary imagination without any secondary imagination is too high. This interpretation of the same lines is cosmological, while the first political analysis that we attempted was anthropological. So you see that the same text can be read from a dimension of anthropology and a dimension of cosmology. The structuralist needs to be careful about the two, and if possible blend, link, compare and contrast the two dimensions. In A Passage to India by E. M. Forster, the confusion and the chaos in the caves. On the anthropological dimension, it stands for the Eurocentric, negative stereotypization of India by the Western imagination. Under Western eyes, India is a chaos, India is a muddle, and the caves are the central signifiers of such Eurocentric fantasy of the non-Western space as dangerous and menacing. But on the other hand, the chaos also stands for the conjugation of Om and Bohm, or self and the other, or totality and infinity, or one and zero. And binary oppositions collapse inside the cave, the semiotic cora is let loose, and that's why the caves result in, to the rationalist inquiry, a chaos. This is the cosmological structuralist analysis of the same cave.